Greetings, Marsh here, and welcome to episode 276 of my modded Factorio playthrough. In this episode, we are going to work on solder coils. Enjoy. And I do believe there are more than one kind, so we can do these in the coolant coil form as well, which is great. And I think the one we unlocked, the new one, is with silver. I think previously we had lead and tin, tin and zinc, and now we can do copper, silver, and tin, so we'll have three methods. And because it is a coil form, it probably will go twice as fast, is my guess. So the thing we'll want to copy will probably be this. And it's right in the way. Although it is possible with some really careful building placement, we can make it work. But actually, it looks like we could if we just move that storage tank into a different spot. Because I think this is where we normally would put it. Like right there. And then we can pick this tank up. And I think that will give us enough room for one pump jack to fit in here. You have to be careful where we send this. I guess it doesn't really matter. But I think we can go to the left here. It's a little zigzaggy. And the track as well to load. Stuff is in the way, as it always is. Uh-oh, the power's not connected here. We've got some confused robots. We've got a lot of confused robots. Might be able to unstick them real fast by just kind of moving this around. Switch this to the solder coils. And then we've got three different methods to make. Probably should just calculate it out to make sure we don't mess anything up. Looks like all three use tin, but that's the only thing in common. We might as well give each side their own. Unique belt here. And the output, probably the 60, I would guess. Although, because of the machines, maybe set this to the input and say 60 of each. And of course, the speeds. So I'm sure this is going to be quite similar to something we already have, but at least we've done our diligence to make sure that the numbers are correct. So we need 4 machines in a line. I guess it doesn't matter too much. We could probably just kind of copy something like this and then build it as we need it. We'll just plop it here for now. So it's going to have 2 belts on each side of each resource. So if we switch this to solder, what's it going to look like? 18 and 18, which is basically 3, but we only have 5 slots on each side. But because we have 4 machines though, I think that will make it so this will work. Just have 2 regulars, 2 longs. Gotta wait for the machines to get here, but that should work. So we can double check the math that we have 2 belts on each side. And the belt is 30, so divided by 8.57 means we need 3.5 inserters, and we have 4 on each side. So that will work. And it'll be 1 on each. So that will be the 4 belts going through there. Now the one with zinc, because it's 2 resources, it's probably going to be the exact same. Seems like it. It's just different resources. And they could share some belts here to potentially make this a little tighter. Although if the belts are kept separate, then it means we won't need any inserter controls. They can just be controlled by the belt themselves, which perhaps might make things easier, even though it is one belt wider doing it that way. So let's try that. It's just easier. So this will be the second tier using zinc. And it's basically the same. Just needs logic. We'll back it out. And then the third tier is copper and silver added to it. This, the numbers might be slightly different. So let's bump it up. There we go, 40 of each. So the same 4 belts, but it's slightly more confusing because we need 1.5 of each one, which sounds kind of annoying. I kind of don't know if I actually want to do it that way. And the machines are much faster, where we only need 2.5, but because of the belt requirement, we basically have to be pretty well stacked. But this might be another situation where perhaps blue belts would be really nice. And I guess technically we could make them if we really wanted to pound them out, but I'd rather just get the bus finished first. Because if we start using blue belts on the bus, it means we'll pretty much have to start using them everywhere, but I kind of just want to get this finished before bothering with blue belts. But one thing we can do is build this setup, keeping blue belts in mind. And I'll write it down and hopefully remember that when we do actually have those blue belts that we'll be able to do this. Because if we only require 3 machines, we could potentially make this a lot smaller, but will we be able to do the inserters with just 3 machines? I actually don't think that we can, because it's still the same 4 belts going in. It's just 1 and a third for each of these. Not to mention, if they're all on one side, each belt can only be accessed by 1 inserter because there's only 5 slots. So we might have to do a side-by-side setup again, and this is going to be really wide right here. So we'll just grab this again and put it right there. But then cut this part up. They would get 2 belts of their stuff from this side, and we would need to upgrade that to blue to get the full amount out of it. And then a third belt would come through the middle, where the last 2 inserters would live. But we gotta offset these a little bit. There we go. And then it's just another one of these on that side. Okay. I think that's all of it. And it's quite a bit. So we'll pick up the whole shebang and then put it 2 spaces over. And then probably just move this to align over it, but I guess it doesn't really matter. They don't have to be completely straight with each other, because if the next setup is much narrower than this, then it can kind of Lego or Tetris its way in there, where this is the wider setup. So the next piece would be right here, and then the coil setup would be wider and fit in there. So I guess we can just kind of leave it like this. We do have this tank we have to get in here, and it's not going to fit in the typical spot. That's okay. Doesn't matter where we put it. Then for once these guys have to come through the side. And a bunch of solder coils to move, but this time it's a lot less of it. Can fit it all in our inventory. Solder, wire, coil, load. Although, is it called wire or just coils? Probably can take the wire part out. And we did run out of these filter frames, so good thing keep grabbing more. It's amazing how many of those go into this. Okay, that's the tier 1, that's the tier 2, this one needs to be the tier 3. Alright, well, before we get the logic set up, we should probably just get all of the belts hooked up, so it will make a little more sense. So this one is lead and tin, and lead is one that hasn't been used in quite a while. It's this belt down here, and getting all these to actually fit in the same space is going to be a little tricky. How are we only having 2 lead belts? Did I just kind of mess that up? Because it looks like there's 4 of them going in there. Yeah, that's 4. That wasn't very smart. We've got empty belt up here at the top. So, I think we can just divert the ore to go up there, rather than move all this around just so it stays lined up. Although, there really isn't enough space up there, because we would need 4 spaces. I guess we'll just have to use 2 down here and 2 up there. So we will use this after all. That's kind of annoying. But what can you do? If that's how the belts line up, then that's how they line up. Don't have much of a choice. I was forgetting about gold all the way up here at the end. I don't know if that'll make it easier or harder, having them separated like that. Because it is possible having these warehouse balancers would be easier if they were the 2-size warehouse instead of the 4. They would be balanced back here, but it's possible that if we overloaded one belt or the other, it wouldn't work out very well. But, oh well. That's kind of annoying, but not much I can do about it now. That's a lot of belts that were placed, so I think they're just going to have to be separated. Okay, well, I guess that's slightly easier, maybe. So tin number 1 would go in there. So we'll need to try to pull from each one of these equally, so the 2 elements of the bus stay balanced. And it actually can't really go here. Well, we'll do another zigzag going around. So that gets the first one taken care of, and probably want to try to line this up the same way. And let's see, tin is required on both of these, so that makes this one a little easier, where we can do something like this. Then 1 on each side. Lining up there. It also needs to line up with that one. But it's also required on both sides of this as well, so we can kind of just keep doing the same thing. So now we need to get that zinc in here, and it is right here. And luckily, it lines up rather nicely. I picked up too many belts, I think. Because whenever I pick anything up, it doesn't quite fit in the inventory. So we put that right there. Squeeze it in. That gets us our zinc. But we also need it on this other side here. So, we can just pick it up, plop it down in the same spot, and run it in there. Might as well get this titanium belt lined up with itself. But, it looks like it actually needs to be that spot right there. This last one looks like it's tin, copper, and silver. Not sure which one would be easier to put through the middle. Well, since we're not using silver for anything, silver might be easier to split up twice. Oh, those don't have any modules in them. There we go. So we need to do 1 more tin for this one. So many warehouses, so many unloaders. So copper, which is actually a little ways down there, needs to go on each side. But it will have trouble lining up. Because of that warehouse there. But it'll actually work fine. If we just kind of move the robots, then we can just do the loop around trick there to get up there, and we'll need to do the same thing again right here if it will fit, and it will if we don't care about the robot network, which we wouldn't, although it is one space too high. And then time to use up all those belts we have in our inventory. Extending the copper down. Then we need the one belt of silver, which should line up right here. And that gets the silver in. So now it's time for the logic. It looks like the logic is one space down, so it's in the gap. So we will pick all those up so it doesn't flow. And we'll do it this way. Since every one of these uses tin as an input, we can use that to control this level here. So of these three ways, which one would we most desire to fill this tank up? Kind of depends on which resource is the one we have the most of. It's kind of hard to tell, because you have a lot of silver and zinc. But maybe we can kind of guess which one we'd have the most of just based on probably cobalt. This is going to be the thing that's going to be ground out the most. And it does create a zinc to make cobalt. Titanium makes neither. And gold makes silver. I'm thinking cobalt is probably the thing that's going to run the most, because these other two can be made from the crystallizer down here. So we'll have slightly more of that. So I would say that zinc is probably the most likely to be overloaded. So it makes the machines in the middle here, the ones that use zinc, the most desirable way, so they can always run and don't need to shut off. Then the second is probably using silver, so we can run a wire up here and control the tin, since that is always an input, and say when this gets below 40,000, so molten solder is below 40,000, they're allowed to turn on. And they're on right now because there's nothing in there. And this one over here is our least desirable way, that uses the lead and tin. But I think we're pretty good about not making a bunch of extra lead. I mean, some of it is made in these processes here, but only a little bit in titanium. And as you can see, lead is one of our lowest resources right now, so I'm least concerned about these, but that's our least desirable way. So we'll run another wire. It doesn't reach down here to those. Same thing, except now it's 30,000. And that sets the priority as far as which one of these methods is most desirable for this machine. But now we've got to turn on and off each one of these methods based on the status of any of these warehouses being overloaded. So this one on the end here would require that copper, silver, or tin is overloaded. Technically tin applies to all of these, but that's going to be our control up here, so we won't worry about it. Instead, we're worrying about copper and silver. And silver is the thing that's probably more likely to be overloaded because it's kind of more of a byproduct rather than a mainline ore. But technically it's possible that either of these could be overloaded. And if one of them is overloaded, we would want to run both of them in order to get rid of the one that was overloaded. So we'll make two combinators here, and we need to go all the way back here to the last time that we had a signal wire and extend it. And we need to go to, actually not directly the belts. We need to hit some combinators. The first one is looking for the status of copper, and if it's overloaded, which is 60,000, green square, and the other one will be silver for the same condition. And it might look a little better if we had power poles up here. And we'll do a green wire. We don't need to, actually we probably don't even need to do that at all. Because basically this is an or condition. If either of these is overloaded, we want both of these belts to run. So really, there's no reason to put a control on both belts. We can control it with just one. So how about we control it with the center belt here of silver. Because it's just easier and simpler. And in that sense, probably can not cross this wire over here. And maybe put it there instead. Thanks for helping. That was fast, but that's because the crawler was over there. And if this receives any green signal, it will turn on. Because it will consume one for the purposes of getting rid of overloaded ore. And getting rid of overloaded ores is actually really important on the bus. That's when things get clogged. And it's interesting now that we are overloaded on manganese. I'm kind of surprised how fast that was. But that's okay because it's a byproduct ore and we kind of intentionally wanted to max that out, which means that any process that can use manganese will. Why do we have an on and an off light right here? Kind of doesn't make a lot of sense. I want to check that real quick. Not that it really matters, that's just for reference. But I wouldn't expect to see both an on and an off light when nothing is happening. The off condition is being sent because of the overloaded manganese. So is it trying to turn on iron? I guess so. Yeah, I guess it does make sense because iron ore is being told to turn on to go up to 32,000 because this is the best way. And then the second best way would be 30,000 and the third best way would be 28. And now the fourth best way, which should be this, is 26. So that actually makes sense. It's a little bothersome because normally I'm used to these lights all being off. So seeing lights that are just on like that kind of throw me for a loop. Hopefully I get used to it. But that's by design. We want all of this manganese on hand and pretty close to maxing out the warehouse to make everything that it goes into more efficient. And yeah, we are maxed out on nickel and that's not going to change for a little while. Until we do some military research, or why is there no resources in here? Or unlock other processing types. Oh, that's the natural gas, so it must have gotten disconnected somewhere. There we go. Wow, that has to be like 1 pixel too far. But should be connected now. There we go. Getting a little bit of flow again. So yeah, if either of these is overloaded, it'll get a green signal, and none of them are. So we can just hook this up now because it is configured. The copper inserters will always swing. The tin is based on this status. So they've tried to fill up, but because we're not overloaded on any resource, it's not getting any silver, which means nothing is going to happen. So now we have tin and zinc. And tin doesn't need to have any signals because this is the most desirable way. So it always goes through. So the thing that is controlled is the zinc. So if that is overloaded, we would want these to turn on. The zinc ore is more than 60,000. Those methods can turn on. And because it's not, it's at 50. They aren't turning on, so now that can be hooked up. And it does what it can. So now we're down to our base control here. And we can't really have a control on lead, because if we did, and lead wasn't overloaded, then nothing would run. So you always have to have a backup method that will always run regardless of whether it's overloaded or not. And that'll be lead here because lead seems like it's not an issue. So we can just hook it up. And I guess needed to hook up the pipe there. But it's running. Filling up the solder. And then we can connect everything. Make sure it's all running. We're actually kind of low, so this is going to run for a little while. Let's see, it's not quite maxed out. It should be. This thing is certainly going. Is it like a flow issue? It just looks like it's an inserter thing. But, I mean, looks like they've balanced out, and really good thing about having a belt like this on the end is it actually is a good buffer to smash a little bit more resources in, as you see. So it's actually at full blast. So that's looking good. Lead and tin should now be running. And they are, or at least tin is. Lead probably isn't because there's an overload of resources somewhere along the line here. Just want to double check that everything seems like it's okay. And I think that it is. I think what it was is there's just some resources that I placed in here from when we built this. So there's a little bit of buffer in the machines right now. But that's looking good. Alright, we'll let that go. And now we have another one we need to do, and still clearing stuff out. But it looks like it's just the regular lead coils at this point. But that's going to have to wait until the next episode. Thanks for watching, and I will see you later.